Now, transgender inmate Jade September won her court case against the Department of Justice and Correctional Services on Monday after she argued that she was denied the right to express her gender behind bars. September is serving a 15-year sentence at the Helderstroom Prison in Caledon, a correctional facility for men. Now, what are the psychological implications of a transgender woman serving a prison sentence in a facility for men? Well, for more on this, I am joined in the studio by Jenna Bayer, a counselling psychologist. A very good afternoon to you, Jenna.
Thank you for having me.
Now, perhaps let's start on the implications and the relevance of Jade September's victory. How does that then impact the prison system moving forward, and perhaps specifically the law as well?
In multiple ways. So firstly, it's a victory for democracy. And what this has done is it's set a precedent for future incidences like this. That's number one. Secondly, this is now an opportunity to educate the wardens and police, men and women who work in those places, for them to understand what transgender is, and the fact that even if you're born a male, if you are undergoing a medical transition, then you should be in a woman's jail. So gender expression is not you've had surgery or that kind of thing. It's that you have already started medical transition. So that could just be in hormones. So police and wardens need to know this. That's a very important thing. And then, of course, psychologically, it's a win for, obviously, listen, people don't want to go to jail, but if in the event that they do, they can know that they're going to the right jail and that they won't feel like they're a woman in the wrong jail, because that in itself is, I'm not with the right gender. I identify as female, which is what being transgender is. You're born in the wrong body, so your assigned gender is perhaps you're a boy, but you identify as a woman. So the moment you now have to go to men's jail, that's in conflict with what you identify as. So those are typical challenges that transgender men and women go through.
Now, clearly, there have to be other steps that have to happen from the legal standpoint.
Sure.
I mean, how do you get the law to identify you as a female if you are in a male body that is still transitioning? What are the kind of processes that are being put in place to ensure that that happens, for transgender individuals?
So if you are transitioning, you need 2 letters from 2 medical professionals that you're medically transitioning. Like I was saying, you don't have to have had surgery, but just that you're on hormones or medications enough. So say you get convicted. When you're in the court, you say to them, I am transitioning, I've got medical proof of such. You provide your details of this, and that's enough proof. That's all you need. So it doesn't need surgery. If on the other hand, you're saying, well, I just dress in different attire, but I haven't had medical transition yet, that's not enough. So it's proof of medical transitioning and 2 letters from medical professionals. That's enough. The fact that she has that, the fact that she has proof of medical transition is enough for her, which is why she won her court case.
Apart from the law, there are also the social issues and the socialization issues, and the cultural issues that are very central to the case and the issues that transgender individuals are facing.
Yeah.
Now, there was a case as well of Gumbi, who was in prison and who was being taunted by prison warders, but also being taunted by other prisoners, telling Gumbi to dress like a man and to act like a man. What are the type of educational, procedures that are taking place at the moment? Because more than the law, there is the mind, and more than that are how we've been raised and how we've been socialized as a society. How do you get through those kind of hurdles?
Sure. Well, in terms of what's happening with that, I think we kind of at the birth stage. There still needs to be education for wardens and policemen and women on this issue. That's number one. Secondly, an understanding of these policemen and women and wardens on what the Constitution says. I don't know if they understand what transgender men and women, what their rights are. I don't know if they know this. So A, it's human rights, B, it's constitutional education, and C, it's them knowing what transgender is. That needs to happen. And then, of course, what under these wardens, what are your belief systems towards this? Because that can influence as well. There are people who do know what being transgender is, and they're still judgmental. So that needs to be assessed too, because this is still a democracy. So even if you go to jail, a prisoner still has rights, such as this. So they still need to know that as well. It's not an excuse to bully. The psychological impact thereof of the inmate is far-reaching. It can be a thing called internalized depression, where you suddenly believe, well, this is all I deserve, I'm not good enough, you feel rejected, you feel excluded, it impacts your self-esteem, you feel that you're just in the wrong place, and this can result in trauma and anxiety, depression, and even thoughts of suicide. That's the impact that can have. In other words, I am less than because I'm transgender. You don't respect my rights, therefore I'm not good enough to exist, whether it's in a prison or not. That's an insight into the psychological impact of discrimination, whether you're an inmate or not. In other words, you repress yourself. I'm less than. So this is the knock-on effect. So wardens, and not just wardens, but lawyers and people in the justice system also need to understand the psychological impact of discrimination that this can have. One act of discrimination can result in suicidal thoughts, depression, anxiety, or even trauma as well. This is what those people need to understand.
Now, I think a lot of times when we talk of transgender, the focus tends to be individuals born in male bodies,
yes,
transitioning into female bodies.
That's right.
What happens when it's the other way around? A woman born into a female body, but wanting to transition into a male?
So it's the same, it's a similar concept. You get trans men and you get trans women. So obviously, if you're born a woman and you want to transition, obviously you've got to take testosterone. Obviously, you'll get facial hair, changes in your body, your weight distribution, etc. So the same applies.
And I'm talking here. I'm talking here in reference to women or transgender women being in a male jail while they're still transitioning, because it's a two-way relationship. There's the transgender man who's getting into a system where they're just men, and there are these men who know that this is a woman who's coming into the system. So there's a psychological dynamic all the way around. And how do then these male prisoners treat a woman who is now with them in a prison? That's what you are advocating for. So I think it's much more dynamic and perhaps much more precarious when it's a woman now in a man's jail.
Yeah. Either way, her rights have to be respected, whether it's a man's or
what about her safety?
What about her safety? Exactly. That's a very good point. So again, this is where the wardens come in. This is where the safety of the jail comes in. This is where her rights need to be respected. I know it's easier said than done. I'm just saying words here, but this is what needs to happen. This is why the wardens being educated needs to happen. Why when she goes into that jail, into the man's jail, they need to be notified of this. So maybe she stays in a separate area, things like that. That's as best I know as far as that goes. All I can answer is that her rights have to be respected. So if she wants to be in a men's jail, then she must. That's the best I can answer for now.
Do you think that maybe there should be perhaps a special, not a special jail, but another section while they're still transitioning, while you haven't yet completely gotten into your female body or you haven't completely gotten into your male body, because it's almost like a no man's land for a particular period of time?
You can't do that because you're fostering discrimination. You're saying we don't belong. We're the separate thing where we belong in. You can't do that. You're a man and you want to be a woman, you identify as a woman. The moment you separate it, you're saying, well, actually, you don't belong with us. So who am I? So that can fuel more discrimination. So
is that not also a measure of protection, though, for the individuals that are still going through that transgender process?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're saying practically.
Yes.
Practically, yes. But that's where the prison system has to be cognizant of. So in reality, I think you've got a great point, because the safety can become an issue. So I don't deny that. But in terms of their rights and in terms of the risk of them stigmatizing themselves and fueling more discrimination can happen more, because I'm saying you're not with us and you're not with them either. So there's a risk of more discrimination. That's in theory. But in reality, I hear you. Because in reality, if the prison system isn't up to snuff, if it's not good enough, and there's no protection, then there is a risk. So I do hear you. That's why I'm saying the prison system has to be more jacked, has to be more educated, has to be aware of this, has to be aware of their rights, and maybe, yes, think of what's in the best interest of the situation. So when they come into the jail in the beginning, maybe put them somewhere isolated initially until such time as they're ready. So I hear what you're saying practically, yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Certainly, something that is developing,
Yeah.
Education, sensitization, awareness having to be raised around these type of issues. But the victory for Jade September in the Equality Court, certainly a win.
It's a victory for democracy.
It's a victory for democracy.
It's a victory for her rights. So if she didn't get that, then it would be a failure of democracy and a failure for her. Democracy must work for everyone, not some people. Must work for everyone.
We thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and thank you for joining us.